Hello, and on behalf of St. Olave's Arts Guild and friends, this is to welcome you to our special program of music, poetry, readings, and song. My name is Annis Tebbett, and I can say that for many years, it's been our pleasure to bring these programs live and in person at St. Olave's Church, often following certain evensong services. But this year, this time, as we all know, things are different. So to work around these challenges, we now present to you an online program with our theme being Together Apart. I'd like to extend thanks to all the generous and talented people who took the time to contribute. The music you just heard was composed by Frank Horvat, a musician and piano teacher living in Etobicoke who holds his student recitals and master classes here at St. Olave's. Frank composed music for self-isolation in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In late March, he created 31 new short pieces of music for solo instruments and invited musicians from all over the world to perform them. The flautists in our intro are all from the Netherlands, showing us how even though we are apart, separated by an ocean, we can be together. Thank you to Frank and Werter van Brugel for contributing that video. We now invite you to watch for each performer as they are introduced on screen. We had lots of fun presenting this program and hope you can spend time with us to laugh, to sing, to think, and above all, to relax and enjoy Together Apart.
A poem for Papatuanuku, Mother Earth, by Nadine Ann Hura, shared by Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand. Rest now, e Papatuanuku. Breathe easy and settle, right here where you are. We'll not move upon you for a while. For now, it's just you and the wind and the forests and the oceans and the sky full of rain. Finally, it's raining. We'll stop. We'll cease, we'll slow down and stay home. Draw each other close and be kind, kinder than we've ever been. I wish we could say we were doing it for you as much as ourselves. But yaha, we're doing it anyway. It's right. It's time. Time to return, time to remember, time to listen and forgive, time to withhold judgment, time to cry, time to think about others. Remove our shoes, press hands to soil, sift grains between fingers, gentle palms. Time to plant, time to wait, time to notice to whom we belong. Katuro turo te wai kamo orange kirunga I akoi. Embrace it, this sacrifice of solitude we have carved out for you. He iti noa iho, a small offering. People always said it wasn't possible to ground flights and stay home and stop our habits of consumption. But it was. It always was. We were just afraid of how much it was going to hurt. And it is hurting. And it will hurt and continue to hurt. But not as much as you have been hurt. So be still now. Wrap your hills around our absence. Loosen the concrete belt cinched tight at your waist. Rest. Breathe. Recover. Heal. And we will do the same. Kia kaha, kia maya, kia mana wanui. Be strong, be brave, be steadfast. Thank you.
It's the new album from K-Tel, isolation hits for great Anglicans, including Fleetwood Mac. Even the mellow side of K-Tel with Elvis.
Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight? Don't stand so close to me. I ain't got nobody is for me.
John Cougar Mellencamp.
It's a lonely old night. Can I put my arms around you? But until I can find me a girl who'll stay and won't play games behind me, and I'll be what I am, a solitary man. Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Strange days indeed. Strange days indeed.
Nobody wants to be without this great album, Anglicans in Isolation, the 2020 special version, available on 8-track, CD, LP, WAV file, MP3, DVD, 4K Ultra HD, Blu-ray. It's the latest in K-Tel, available everywhere.
Only the lonely know the way I feel tonight. I'm so lonesome I could cry.
Everybody talks about a new world in the morning. New world in the morning, so they say.
Of course, every K-Tel record wouldn't be complete without a bonus cut. This lady who just passed away in 2020 at the age of 103. Here's our tribute to Vera Lynn.
There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait.
K-Tel's newest collection,
And
Anglicans in Isolation, available Amazon.com or at your local Sam the Record Man.
We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
The Ballyshannon foundered off the coast of Caribou, and down in fathoms many went the captain and the crew. Down went the owners, greedy men whom hope of gain allured. Oh, dry the starting tear, for they were heavily insured. Besides the captain and the mate, the owners and the crew, the passengers were also drowned, excepting only two, young Peter Gray, who tasted teas for Baker, Croup and Co., and Summers, who from eastern shores imported indigo. These passengers, by reason of their clinging to a mast upon a desert island, were eventually cast. They hunted for their meals, as Alexander Selkirk used, but they couldn't chat together. They had not been introduced. For Peter Gray and Summers too, though certainly in trade, were properly particular about the friends they made, and somehow thus they settled it without a word of mouth, that Gray should take the northern half, while Summers took the south. On Peter's portion, oysters grew, a delicacy rare, but oysters were a delicacy Peter couldn't bear. On Summers' side was turtle, on the shingle, lying thick, which Summers couldn't eat because it always made him sick. Grey gnashed his teeth with envy as he saw a mighty store of turtle unmolested on his fellow creature's shore. The oysters at his feet aside impatiently he shoved, for Turtle and his mother were the only things he loved. And Summers sighed in sorrow as he settled in the south, for the thought of Peter's oysters brought the water to his mouth. He longed to lay him down upon the shelly bed and stuff. He had often eaten oysters, but had never had enough. How they wished an introduction to each other they had had when on board the Ballyshannon, and it drove them nearly mad to think how very friendly with each other they might get if it wasn't for the arbitrary rule of etiquette. One day, when out a-hunting for the most ridiculous, Grey overheard his fellow man soliloquizing thus: "I wonder how the playmates of my youth are getting on. McConnell, S.B. Walters, Paddy Byles, and Robinson." These simple words made Peter as delighted as could be. Old chummies at the Charterhouse were Robinson and he. He walked straight up to Summers, then he turned extremely red, hesitated, hummed and hawed a bit, then cleared his throat and said, "I beg your pardon, pray forgive me if I seem too bold, but you have breathed a name I know familiarly of old. You spoke of Robinson. I happened to be by. You know him?" "Yes, extremely well." "Allow me, so do I." It was enough. They felt they could more pleasantly get on, for, the magic of the fact, they each knew Robinson. And Mr. Summers' turtle was at Peter's service quite, and Mr. Summers punished Easter's oyster bed all night. They soon became like brothers from community of wrongs. They wrote each other little odes and sang each other songs. They told each other anecdotes disparaging their wives. On several occasions, too, they saved each other's lives. They felt quite melancholy when they parted for the night, and got up in the morning soon as ever it was light. Each other's pleasant company they reckoned so upon, and all because it happened that they both knew Robinson. They lived for many years on that inhospitable shore, and day by day they learned to love each other more and more. At last, to their astonishment, on getting up one day, they saw a frigate anchored in the offing of the bay. To Peter an idea occurred. "Suppose we cross the main? So good an opportunity may not be found again." And Summers thought a minute, then ejaculated, "Dan, I was wondering how my business in the city's getting on." "But stay," said Mr. Peter. "When in England, as you know, I earned my living tasting teas for Baker, Croup and Co. I may be superseded. My employer thinks me dead." "Then come with me," said Summers, "and taste indigo instead." But all their plans were scattered in a moment when they found the vessel was a convict ship from Portland, outward bound. When a boat came off to fetch them, though they felt it very kind to go on board, they firmly but respectfully declined. And both the happy settlers roared with laughter at the joke. They recognized a gentlemanly fellow pulling stroke. 'Twas Robinson, a convict, in an unbecoming frock, condemned to 7 years for misappropriating stock. They laughed no more, for Summers thought he had been rather rash in knowing one whose friend had misappropriated cash. And Peter thought a foolish tack he must have gone upon in making the acquaintance of a friend of Robinson. At first, they didn't quarrel very openly, I've heard. They nodded when they met, and now and then exchanged a word. The word grew rare, and rarer still the nodding of the head, and when they meet each other now, they cut each other dead. To allocate the island, they agreed by word of mouth, and Peter takes the north again, and Summers takes the south. And Peter has the oysters, which he hates in layers thick, and Summers has the turtle. Turtle always makes him sick.
Hello, tonight I'm going to sing for you So Far Away by Carole King. When I was a teenager and I went to summer camp, this is a song that I sang a lot with my friends there, and especially Janet Mollenhauer, and she is going to join me today. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Janet actually grew up in the neighborhood and went to St. Olave's as for brownies when she was little, so we all have those connections. I want to dedicate this song to the people who are missing the people and the places that are so far away from them. In this time, we're all feeling a little bit disconnected. And for me, this is my love song, my love letter to St. Olave's, the place that I love and I miss being there so much. So I hope you enjoy this. Thank you.
So far away, doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? It would be so fine to see your face at my door. It doesn't help to know you're just time away. Long ago I reached for you and there you stood. Holding you again could only do me good. How I wish I could, but you're so far away. One more song about moving along the highway. Can't say much of anything that's new. If I could only work this life out my way, I'd rather spend it being close to you, but you're so far away. Doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? It would be so fine to see your face at my door, and it doesn't help to know you're so far away. Yeah, yeah, you're so far away. Traveling around sure gets me down and lonely. Nothing much to do but close my mind. I sure hope the road don't come to own me. There's so many dreams I've yet to find, but you're so far away. Doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? It would be so fine to see your face at my door, but it doesn't help to know you're so far away. Yeah, yeah, you're so far away. Hey, you're so far
This story is called The Quarantine of Alexander Abraham. It's taken from the Chronicles of Avonlea, and yes, written by Lucy Maud Montgomery. The story describes quarantine as it happened over 110 years ago. It features a a female character who is central to the story, and she is a very strong-minded, strong-willed woman. Her name is Angelina Macpherson, but due to her stalwart character, everyone in town calls her Peter. As a bit of background, she's a Sunday school teacher to a boys' Sunday school class, and one of her students is a certain Jimmy Spencer. Jimmy came to one class, but then stopped coming. She wants to find out why. She has last heard that Jimmy Spencer has worked as a hired farmhand at the farm of Alexander Abraham Bennett. So off she goes to confront Jimmy Spencer at this farm. And this is where the story takes place. Alexander Abraham's place was about 3 miles along the White Sands Road. I knew the house as soon as I came to it by its neglected appearance. It needed paint badly. The blinds were crooked and torn. Weeds grew up to the very door. Plainly, there was no woman about that place. Still, it was a nice house, and the barns were splendid. My father always said that when a man's barns were bigger than his house, it was a sign that his income exceeded his expenditure. But Alexander Abraham evidently knows how to run a farm, even if it is said he's a woman hater, I remarked as I got out and tied my pony to the railing. I had driven up to the house from the back way, and now I was opposite a side door, opening on the veranda. I thought I may as well go up to it, and marched up the path. Just as I was halfway up, a dog swooped around the front corner and made straight for me. He was the ugliest dog I had ever seen, and he didn't even bark. Just came silently and speedily on with a business-like eye. I got in by a window easily enough and found myself in a bedroom, the likes of which disorder and dust and general awfulness I have never seen in all my life. But I did not pause to take in details. I marched downstairs, fervently hoping I should meet no one on the way. I did not. The hall below was empty and dusty. I opened the first door. I came to and walked boldly in. A man was sitting by the window, looking moodily out. I should have known him for Alexander Abraham anywhere. He had just the same uncared-for, ragged appearance that his house had. And yet, like the house, it seemed that he could not be bad-looking if he were trimmed up just a little. His hair looked as it had never been combed, and his whiskers were wild in the extreme. He looked at me with blank amazement in his countenance. "Where is Jimmy Spencer?" I demanded. "I have come to see him." "How did the dog ever let you in?" asked the man, staring at me. "He didn't let me in," I retorted. "He chased me all over the lawn, and I only saved myself from being torn piecemeal by scrambling up a tree. You ought to be prosecuted for keeping such a dog. Where is Jimmy?" Instead of answering, Alexander Abraham began to laugh in a most unpleasant fashion. "Trust a woman for getting into a man's house if she has made her mind to," he said disagreeably, and added, "Jimmy is not here," gruffly, but not quite so assuredly. "He left last week and hired with a man over at Newbridge." "In that case," I said, "I won't disturb you any longer. I shall go." Yes, I think that would be the wisest thing, said Alexander Abraham, not disagreeably this time, but reflectively, as if there would be some doubt about the matter. I'll let you out by the back door. The dog will not interfere with you. Please go away quietly and quickly. Alexander Abraham opened the door, which was locked, just as a buggy containing 2 men drove into the yard. Too late, he exclaimed in a tragic tone. I understood that something dreadful must have happened, but I did not care, since, as I fondly suppose, it did not concern me. I pushed out past Alexander Abraham, who was looking as guilty as if he had been caught burglarizing, and came face to face with the man who had sprung from the buggy. It was old Dr. Blair from Carmody, and he was looking at me as if he had caught me shoplifting. My dear Peter, he said gravely, I am very sorry to see you here. Very sorry indeed. I admit that this exasperated me. Besides, no man on earth, not even my own family doctor, has any right to my dear Peter, me. There is no loud call for sorrow, doctor, I said loftily. If a woman, 48 years of age, a member of the Presbyterian Church, in good and regular standing, cannot call upon one of her Sunday school scholars without wrecking all the proprieties, how old must she be before she can? The doctor did not answer my question. Instead, he looked reproachfully at Alexander Abraham. Is this how you keep your word, Mr. Bennett? He said. I thought you promised me that you would not let anyone into the house. I didn't let her in, growled Mr. Bennett. Good heavens, man! She climbed in an upstairs window, despite the presence of my grounds of a dog. What is to be done with a woman like that? I do not understand what all this means, I said, addressing to myself, to the doctor, and ignoring Alexander Abraham entirely. But if my presence here is so extremely inconvenient to all concerned, you can still be relieved of it. I am going at once. I'm very sorry, my dear Peter, said the doctor impressively, but that is just what I cannot allow you to do. The house is under quarantine for smallpox. You will have to stay here. Smallpox. For the first and last time in my life, I openly lost temper with a man. I wheeled furiously upon Alexander Abraham. Why didn't you tell me? I cried. Tell you, he said, glaring at me. When I first saw you, it was too late to tell you. I thought the kindest thing I could do was to hold my tongue and let you get away in happy ignorance. This will teach you to take a man's house by storm, madam. Now, don't quarrel, my good people, interposed the doctor seriously. You'll have to spend some time together under the same roof, and you won't improve the situation by disagreeing. You see, Peter, it was this way. Mr. Bennett was in town yesterday, where, as you are aware, there is a bad outbreak of smallpox, and took dinner in a boarding house where one of the maids was ill. Last night, she developed unmistakable symptoms of smallpox. The Board of Health at once got off all the people who were in the house yesterday, so far as they could locate them, and put them under quarantine. I don't think there's much danger of Bennett taking the smallpox, but until we are sure, you must remain here. While listening to the doctor, I had been thinking. It was the most distressing predicament I had ever gotten into in my life, but there was no sense in making it worse. "Very well, doctor," I said calmly. "Yes, I was vaccinated a month ago when news of the smallpox first came. When you go back through Avonlea, kindly go to Sarah Pye and ask her to put my 2 dark print wrappers, some aprons, and some changes of underclothing in my 3rd best valise and have it sent down to me. My pony is tied out there to the fence. Please take him home. That is all, I think." The doctor drove away and I went into the house. Then Alexandra Abraham went. As he closed the door, I heard him say in capitals, "What an awful woman!" And that is the end of the reading. Thank you.
My offering for this performance of the St. Olave's Arts Guild is a poem by 6th century Christian philosopher Boethius. Boethius wrote this poem as part of his last and master work, The Consolation of Philosophy. This work was written by him near the end of his life as he was in prison, and it takes the form of a dialogue between himself and personified philosophy. It's interspersed with poems, and this poem, which I'm about to read, is the 8th and last poem of the 2nd book. Boethius wrote in Latin, and so this is a translation. That the world weaves in constant round a harmony of seasons, that the warring elements keep steadfast accord, that Phoebus' golden chariot conveys the rosy dawn. So nighttime, when the moon holds sway, is led forth by her sun, in order that the vast and raging sea in fixed bounds holds the waves and will not let the land encroach or wander past its end. It's love who fashions these things, one to one, as in a chain, who rules the lands and calms the seas, that love who reigns in heaven. And if he, love, should loose the reins, that order that in concord shows his care would be but endless strife. Where all things move in one great dance, each step a sign of kindly faith, they would instead compete to tear apart their very frame. By him the sacred pledge of peace causes wars to end, and spouse to spouse is bound in pure affection's holy ties. His are the laws that draw together trusted friends. O happy and blessed humanity, if only love, who reigns in heaven, also rules your hearts.
This is a poem by William Wordsworth entitled "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud." I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils.
Thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm glad I can help. The song's by Eric Carmen. When I was young, I never needed anyone, and making love was just for fun. But those days are gone. Living alone, I think of all the friends I've known. But when I dial the telephone, nobody's home. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. Hard to be sure. Sometimes I feel so insecure, and love so distant and obscure remains the cure. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. When I was young, I never needed anyone, and making love was just for fun. Those days are gone. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. All by myself, don't wanna live all by myself anymore. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore. This one's by Three Dog Night. One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do. Two can be as bad as one. It's the loneliest number since the number one. No is the saddest experience you'll ever know. Yes is the saddest experience you'll ever know. 'Cause one is the loneliest number that you'll ever do. One is the loneliest number, worse than two. It's just no good anymore since you went away. Now I spend my time just making rhymes for yesterday. One is the number. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.